ask yourself a very simple question this morning. What causes spiritual death? The first thing that should come to mind is sin, right? And some of us are sitting here saying, okay, but what does that really have to do with us? Because we've given our lives and our hearts to Christ, and we've been following him, and yeah, we mess up, but we're not really living in that pattern of sin anymore. Well, I think that there are some things that we hold on to that might not be blatant sin, but cause us a little each day to die spiritually. There are habits, there are worries, anxieties that we carry with us. There are relationships that aren't healthy for us. There are things that consume our time and pull our focus from following the Lord. There are things that take time away from reading his word and from praying and from ministering and going out and reaching people and encouraging others and giving the love of the Lord. So many times I hear people say, I would really get involved in this ministry. I would really go after God. I would really follow him wholeheartedly, but I just need this in my life to change first. I just need to get through this sickness. I just need to get through this difficult time with my son or my daughter. I just need to get done with school. I just need to finish this activity. I just need to get to a place where I'm not so messed up in my own life anymore. Then I'll follow him. Then I'll serve the Lord with everything I have in me. Then I'll be fully free to go after him. Jesus is saying, no. If you're waiting for all of those things to happen, then you might as well wait until 2 + 2 = 5. And I'm not real good at math, but I know that that's not going to happen ever. Jesus is saying you have got to stop waiting for everything else to be taken care of and to be done first. You have to choose to let go, to sever those ties with those things that bring spiritual death. You've got to make that decision to follow me now. Let those who are uninterested in the spiritual things, let those people stay back. Let those people deal with the things that are dead, that don't bring life. But you, follow him. Let that spiritual vitality take over your life and give that life away to other people. Jesus encounters the final man in our passage who says, Lord, I will follow you, but first let me just go back home and say goodbye to those people who are there. Seems like a reasonable request, doesn't it? Moms, if your son or daughter was going to go away to the missions field, wouldn't you expect that they would say goodbye to you first? You might even have a going away party, something to say, hey, we're happy, we're proud of you, now go and be blessed. But Jesus, again, shocks us a little bit with his response. And he says, no one after putting his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God. In other words, no. Now, there are a couple of levels occurring here. If you remember some stories from the Old Testament, then you might remember that there's a similar occurrence in the Old Testament. Anybody familiar with that? When Elijah is passing the mantle to Elisha basically makes the same request, only he's allowed to go and to do this. Now, Jesus was sometimes compared to Elijah. And what he's doing here is making a not so subtle statement that I'm greater than Elijah. I'm worth giving up everything for. I'm the one who is worth dropping everything else in your life for. Now, there's also some practical levels that we can look at this morning. Would going back home to say goodbye have caused this young man to change his mind? If he went back home and mom started crying and said, please don't go, would he have hesitated? Was he looking at following Jesus as maybe one of those things that really would cause his physical death? And so he was more concerned about getting his affairs in order, making sure all the paperwork was taken care of before he made this decision to go? Would those attachments at home be too strong, and would it have been too much of a temptation for him if he went back to say goodbye? The answer to all of those speculations is possibly. We don't really know. But I want us to look at Jesus' response, because the key is in his response to the man. He says, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom. And the idea is that if you're plowing a furrow and you look behind you while you're doing that, the furrow will become crooked. It's a bit like trying to drive forward while constantly looking in your rearview mirror. Most of us have a hard enough time driving forward looking ahead. Let's not look in our rearview mirror while we're driving the whole time. That's what it would be like. If you're plowing and you're going forward and you're looking behind you the whole time, the furrow will become crooked and it will be an unproductive harvest. That's the reference that he's making here. You cannot go forward in your journey with Christ if you are constantly looking back. That's a really important thing for us to hear this morning. It's not necessarily a case of going back to live that old life, to live in the sin that you lived in before, but it's that constantly glancing back at the life that you had before you came to know him. You remember what happened to Lot's wife when she looked back? It's that same concept here. And that looking back while trying to move forward, it suggests a few things. It suggests that there's a reluctance there to break with your previous lifestyle. It suggests that there might be a desire to taste sin just a little bit longer. I've had a lot of people say to me over the years, I wish I could just give up this whole Christianity thing for one day, just one day. If I could just live like I lived before for just one day, I could tell everybody how I really felt about them. I wouldn't have to, oh yeah, I've heard people say this. I wouldn't have to be nice to everybody. I wouldn't have to get up and try to live better and try to be kind to people and try to love my enemy. If I could just give it up for one day, that's looking back. That's a desire to taste that sinful nature just a little bit longer. And Jesus is saying here that's not what he wants. If you are looking back, that will cause you to serve him or to attempt to serve him. I don't even really know if we can do it adequately if we're looking back. But it will cause you to try to do this with a divided heart. And we cannot serve him with a divided heart because every time you look back, eventually that journey, that straight path that you're walking on, it will become so crooked that you won't be able to follow it anymore. You will not be able to maintain a life of following Christ if you're continually going back. And some of us are living our lives trying to walk forward but looking behind us. Some of us are continually looking over our shoulder. And sometimes it's not even looking at the sin that maybe you thought you enjoyed before you came to Christ, or the fact that it was easier. Because let's just be honest, it's easier to just not care about anybody, to not love anybody around us. Sometimes it's looking back at the mistakes that we've made, at the faults, the failures, and we cling to those things. We cling to the shame. We cling to the condemnation. That's not from him, that's from you. And when you are looking back and you are holding on so tightly to those things, you can't walk forward in your journey with him. You can't move ahead. We have to sever all of the ties that we have with those backward glances, with the things that came before our life with him. It's the only healthy way to fully be committed to serving him. Do you need to look forward this morning? It's an important question, a fresh start, a new step, one step in front of the other, in front of the other, in front of the other. Herb and I were talking about this idea this week. We were preparing for our youth small group, and he said to me, being a Christian isn't easy. The word that he actually used was, he said to me, it's not attractive. It's not attractive. When you're trying to talk to teenagers, that's a tough sell, because everything else in their world right now is so much more attractive than following God. Everything. And I thought, oh, can we really say that? Because, of course, the pastor in me wants to say, it's the best thing in the whole world. Following Christ is this beautiful journey, and it's being in his presence, and it's knowing about him, and it's being involved in a relationship with the one that loves you so closely and dearly. And then I was researching the passage and researching the message, and I came across another very well-known theologian who said, Christianity is not an attractive option. He used your exact word. It's not an attractive option. Over and over again in Scripture, Jesus seems to say, are you sure? Are you really sure that you want to do this? This isn't attractive. It isn't comfortable. It isn't easy. It will require you to leave everything else behind, but it's a decision that will give you abundant life. It's a decision that when the world drops out from underneath you, you know that you can still hold on to Him. It's a decision that will give you a joy deep down in your spirit that isn't dependent on the things that you have or on what you do. It's dependent on Him. It's a decision that will give you that contentment that Paul wrote about, that no matter what happened to him, he was going to be okay. Following Christ is a decision that will give you the greatest eternal rewards you could ever know. But in order to be His disciples, in order to continue to walk with Him, then we have to sever ties with some of these things. We have to sever ties with that security that we feel like the world gives us, which is just a false security anyway. We have to sever ties with those things that are holding us and causing us to die spiritually. We have to sever ties with the backward glances. So I'm going to have the worship team come back this morning. And as I was preparing this and just really praying about how to end this, you might have noticed that there's a lot of pink ribbon along the edge of the stage this morning. It was not for Jude's dedication because it would be blue. But you've heard me say before, and I will say it again, and I will probably say it in the future. Sometimes we just have to do something tangible that solidifies a moment in our lives. And I just really felt like when I was praying, the Lord was speaking to me about some things in my own life, but also speaking to me about some things that you might be going through that you just need to sever ties with. You just need to break those things off, to cut those things off, because it's preventing you from moving forward in the life that He has for you. So if you feel like that's you this morning, if you feel like you need to break off a tie maybe with a preconceived notion that you had that this life of Christianity would be beautiful and wonderful and all roses, if you need to sever a tie with an excuse that you've been giving to not passionately, wholeheartedly go after Him, if you need to sever a tie with something that you're holding on to mentally or emotionally from your past, then I just want you to simply walk forward as Mike and the team do the last song. There's 2 pairs of scissors up here, and there's a bunch of pieces of ribbon. Just cut that ribbon. There is nothing magical about this. There's nothing like, woo, freaky spiritual about this. This is just something that you're saying to the Lord, just so you can cement this in your own mind, that you're saying to the Lord, Lord, I'm cutting it off. I'm breaking off the tie with what's holding me back from fully following you. You may have been serving the Lord for 3 minutes, and you may have been serving Him for 30 years. Probably every one of us has something. If it's not you this morning, that's cool too. But if you feel like you just need to make that gesture before the Lord this morning, then that's available for you to do.